They always told me that friends were the family we choose for ourselves, that friends would stand by you when the world turned its back, that they would protect you, lift you, carry you through the darkest storms. I believed that with all my heart, and maybe that was my first mistake, believing too much. Because the person who shattered me was someone I once called my best friend. I was 16 when it happened. I was still that girl who dreamed too much, laughed too easily, and trusted too quickly. I thought the world was cruel sometimes, but not that cruel. I thought betrayal came from enemies, from strangers, from people who already showed you their teeth. I never imagined it could come from the very hand I used to hold, the shoulder I used to lean on, the voice I used to confide in. He was kind to me, or at least he pretended to be. He listened when no one else did. He walked me home after school. He promised he would always protect me. And in a house where my parents argued endlessly and my siblings were too busy to notice me, his attention felt like a gift I couldn't afford to lose. I trusted him. God, how I trusted him. That trust became my ruin. I won't tell you the details. I don't have the strength to relive every moment of that night. What I will tell you is this: one choice, one betrayal, one act of cruelty destroyed the girl I used to be. I walked into that room believing I was safe, and I walked out a stranger to myself. My laughter disappeared, my dreams shattered, my soul felt dirty, broken, and unworthy of love. The next morning, I looked at my reflection in the mirror and couldn't recognize myself. My eyes looked older, heavier, carrying a weight I had never known. I wanted to scream, to tell someone, to beg for help. But when I opened my mouth, no words came out. Who would believe me? He was the golden boy, the one everyone admired. And I was just a girl, quiet, naive, fragile. If I spoke, I feared they would say it was my fault, that I had led him on, that I had been stupid to trust him. So, I said nothing. Silence became my prison. Every time I passed him at school, he smiled like nothing had happened, like he hadn't stolen the very core of who I was. That smile cut deeper than any knife, because it reminded me that he wasn't haunted, I was. He wasn't broken, I was. Nights were the worst. I would lie awake, the memories clawing at me, my pillow soaked with tears I couldn't stop. Sometimes I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle the sobs, terrified someone in my family might hear. But in truth, no one ever listened. No one ever noticed. And that's the cruelest part of betrayal. Not just the act itself, but the silence that follows. Weeks turned into months. I became quieter, smaller, almost invisible. My friends drifted away, confused by the sudden shadows in my eyes. Teachers stopped asking why my grades slipped. My parents thought I was just being a moody teenager. No one knew. No one cared to know. Except him. He knew. And he carried on with his life, laughing, smiling, living free, while I carried the chains he placed on me. But here's the part that terrifies me most. Even in my pain, even in my silence, part of me still longed for him. Not in love, but in memory. In the fragments of friendship we once had before he ruined everything. And that longing, that betrayal of my own heart, made me hate myself even more. I thought I could bury it forever. I thought if I stayed silent long enough, it would fade. But silence doesn't heal. It festers. It grows. And now, years later, I can no longer carry it alone. That's why I'm telling you this now. Because the truth burns hotter when it's buried. Because the weight of secrets can crush you before death does. Because maybe, just maybe, by speaking it aloud, I'll finally breathe again. But there's something you don't know yet. Something darker. Something that made the betrayal cut even deeper than you can imagine. He didn't just take my trust. He left me with a secret that nearly destroyed my future. They always told me that friends were the family we choose for ourselves, that friends would stand by you when the world turned its back, that they would protect you, lift you, carry you through the darkest storms. I believed that with all my heart. And maybe that was my first mistake, believing too much. Because the person who shattered me was someone I once called my best friend. I was 16 when it happened. I was still that girl who dreamed too much, laughed too easily, and trusted too quickly. I thought the world was cruel sometimes, but not that cruel. I thought betrayal came from enemies, from strangers, from people who already showed you their teeth. I never imagined it could come from the very hand I used to hold, the shoulder I used to lean on, the voice I used to confide in. He was kind to me, or at least he pretended to be. He listened when no one else did. He walked me home after school. He promised he would always protect me. And in a house where my parents argued endlessly and my siblings were too busy to notice me, his attention felt like a gift I couldn't afford to lose. I trusted him. God, how I trusted him. That trust became my ruin. I won't tell you the details. I don't have the strength to relive every moment of that night. What I will tell you is this: one choice, one betrayal, one act of cruelty destroyed the girl I used to be. I walked into that room believing I was safe, and I walked out a stranger to myself. My laughter disappeared, my dreams shattered, my soul felt dirty, broken, and unworthy of love. The next morning, I looked at my reflection in the mirror and couldn't recognize myself. My eyes looked older, heavier, carrying a weight I had never known. I wanted to scream, to tell someone, to beg for help. But when I opened my mouth, no words came out. Who would believe me? He was the golden boy, the one everyone admired. And I was just a girl, quiet, naive, fragile. If I spoke, I feared they would say it was my fault, that I had led him on, that I had been stupid to trust him. So I said nothing. Silence became my prison. Every time I passed him at school, he smiled like nothing had happened, like he hadn't stolen the very core of who I was. That smile cut deeper than any knife, because it reminded me that he wasn't haunted, I was. He wasn't broken, I was. Nights were the worst. I would lie awake, the memories clawing at me, my pillow soaked with tears I couldn't stop. Sometimes I pressed my hand over my mouth to muffle the sobs, terrified someone in my family might hear. But in truth, no one ever listened. No one ever noticed. And that's the cruelest part of betrayal. Not just the act itself, but the silence that follows. Weeks turned into months. I became quieter, smaller, almost invisible. My friends drifted away, confused by the sudden shadows in my eyes. Teachers stopped asking why my grades slipped. My parents thought I was just being a moody teenager. No one knew. No one cared to know. Except him. He knew. And he carried on with his life, laughing, smiling, living free, while I carried the chains he placed on me. But here's the part that terrifies me most. Even in my pain, even in my silence, part of me still longed for him. Not in love, but in memory, in the fragments of friendship we once had before he ruined everything. And that longing, that betrayal of my own heart, made me hate myself even more. I thought I could bury it forever. I thought if I stayed silent long enough, it would fade. But silence doesn't heal. It festers. It grows. And now, years later, I can no longer carry it alone. That's why I'm telling you this now. Because the truth burns hotter when it's buried. Because the weight of secrets can crush you before death does. Because maybe, just maybe, by speaking it out loud, I'll finally breathe again. But there's something you don't know yet. Something darker. Something that made the betrayal cut even deeper than you can imagine. He didn't just take my trust. He left me with a secret that nearly destroyed my future.
The morning after my mother's discovery, the house no longer felt like home. The silence at breakfast was thick, heavier than any words. My father stared into his plate, his jaw tight, refusing to even glance at me. My mother's eyes burned holes into my skin, and every bite I swallowed felt like swallowing stones. I prayed she would keep it between us, that even if she hated me, even if she saw me as a stain on her reputation, she would at least protect me from the cruelty of others. But mothers don't always protect. Sometimes they wound deeper than strangers ever could. That Sunday, she told the pastor's wife. By Monday morning, whispers followed me through the school hallways. Girls who once sat beside me at lunch now giggled behind their hands. Boys smirked when I passed, their eyes lingering with judgment. Slut, I heard one of them hiss under his breath. My cheeks burned, my stomach twisted. I wanted to vanish, to melt into the floor and never come back. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, spreading like wildfire. By the end of the week, the whole town knew. And not one person asked if I was okay. Not one person wondered if my story was different than the rumors. No, they all assumed they knew the truth. A girl who had been careless, a girl who had no morals, a girl who deserved the shame that clung to her name. Even my relatives turned against me. My aunt refused to let me visit her home anymore, saying I would be a bad influence on her daughters. My grandmother, who once kissed my forehead every Sunday after church, now looked at me with disgust, her lips pressed tight, as though speaking to me would taint her own soul. I was 16, carrying a child I hadn't chosen, and I was completely, utterly alone. The only one who kept smiling was him, the boy I once called my friend. He walked through the school halls untouched, his reputation shining as if nothing had happened. People greeted him warmly. Teachers praised him. Girls still whispered about how handsome he was. And me, I was the sinner. I wanted to scream his name. I wanted to stand in the middle of the hallway and shout, "It was him! He did this! I never asked for this life!" But fear held me silent, because deep down, I knew the truth. They would never believe me. They would believe him. They always did. The nights grew darker. My pillow was soaked with tears I never let anyone see. I clutched my stomach, torn between love and hatred, praying for a miracle that never came. But then came the night that broke me. I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. My mother's voice was sharp, cutting through the air like broken glass. "We can't let her ruin us. Everyone is talking. The shame is unbearable. We need to get rid of it before it destroys us." My father's voice was lower, but no less cruel. "And what do you suggest? She's already ruined. That belly will only grow bigger. People will know. We'll be finished." My heart raced. My breath caught. Get rid of it. That's what my mother had said. Not help her, not protect her, not believe her. No, her solution to my pain was to erase me and the life inside me. I stumbled back into my room, pressing my hand over my mouth to muffle the sobs. I realized then that I wasn't just carrying a child. I was carrying a battle for my survival. The next morning, my mother came into my room, her face cold, her voice like ice. "You will not ruin us. Do you understand? We'll take care of this, quietly. No one will ever have to know." I stared at her, my heart breaking, my voice trembling. "Mama, please, this is my baby." Her eyes narrowed. "No, it's your mistake." And with those words, I knew my greatest betrayal wasn't just from him, it was from her. Because a mother is supposed to protect her child, but mine was preparing to destroy me.
When my mother said those words, "It's your mistake," something inside me shattered. But at the same time, something else was born. A fire. A stubborn spark that whispered, "No, this child is not a mistake. This child is mine." For days, I lived in fear. Every time the phone rang, every time my mother left the room, I wondered what she was planning. She stopped letting me leave the house alone. She watched me like a hawk, her eyes cold, as if she were guarding a prisoner instead of her daughter. My father barely spoke to me at all. His silence was worse than anger. It was abandonment in its purest form. He didn't care what happened to me, as long as the family name stayed clean. I was 16. I had no money, no one to trust, no future. But I had one thing left, the tiny heartbeat growing inside me. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had to fight for something bigger than myself. At night, I would lie awake, pressing my hands to my stomach, whispering to the life inside me. "I don't know how to protect you," I cried softly, "but I promise I'll try. I promise I won't let them take you from me." But promises are hard to keep when you are powerless. One evening, I overheard my mother on the phone again. Her voice was low, sharp, urgent. "Yes, tomorrow. We'll take her in the morning. No one else will know." My body went cold. Tomorrow? She was planning to take me somewhere, to end it, to erase me, to erase my child. That night, I didn't sleep. My tears stained the pillow as I thought of what to do. Run? But where? I had no one. No friends left, no family who cared, no money. The thought of walking into the world alone terrified me, but the thought of losing my baby terrified me more. As dawn crept through the curtains, I made a decision. I would run. I packed a small bag, just a few clothes, a toothbrush, and the locket my grandmother had given me before she turned her back on me. I tucked away the little money I had saved from odd chores, barely enough for a bus ticket. I stood in the doorway of my room, my bag clutched tightly, my heart pounding. This was it. My chance to escape, to protect my child, to choose life over silence. But as I stepped into the hallway, I froze. My mother was standing there. Her arms were crossed, her eyes filled with cold fury. "Where do you think you're going?" My breath caught in my throat. My hands trembled around the bag. "Nowhere," I whispered, my voice cracking. She snatched the bag from my hands, ripping it open, clothes spilling onto the floor. Her face twisted in rage. "You think you can run from me? You think you can bring shame to this family and then just disappear?" Tears streamed down my face as I begged her, "Mama, please, please don't do this. Please don't take my baby away from me." For a flicker of a second, I thought I saw something in her eyes. Hesitation, sorrow, maybe even love. But it vanished as quickly as it came. Her voice was steel. "You don't get to decide. I do." And with that, she grabbed my arm and dragged me back into the room, locking the door behind her. I collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into my hands, the weight of despair crushing me. I felt trapped, like an animal in a cage, waiting for the slaughter. But even in that moment of despair, the spark inside me refused to die. Somewhere deep in my heart, a voice whispered, "This isn't the end. Fight. Find a way." Because I knew if I didn't, tomorrow morning, everything I had left, my child, my hope,
my future would be gone.
That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mother's words echoed in my head like a curse. You don't get to decide. I do. I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling, tears rolling silently down my cheeks. My stomach clenched, not just with fear, but with a strange, fragile love. I placed my trembling hands over the small swell beneath my dress and whispered, I don't know how, but I'll save you. I promise I'll save you. The hours crawled by. Every sound, the creak of the house, the ticking of the clock, felt like a countdown to the moment they would take me away. I thought about the bag my mother had ripped apart, the door she had locked, the trap I couldn't escape, and for the first time in weeks, I thought I had lost. But sometimes, help comes from places you don't expect. It was close to midnight when I heard a soft tap on the window. My heart leapt. Slowly, I sat up, wiping the tears from my eyes, and crept across the room. I pulled back the curtain, and there he was. Not him. Not the boy who had betrayed me. No, this was Daniel, my neighbor. The quiet boy from down the street who rarely spoke but always noticed. The one who used to carry my books when they were too heavy, who fixed my bike when the chain broke, and who asked me once why I looked so sad when everyone else was laughing. His face was pale in the moonlight, his eyes filled with concern. He mouthed the words, "Are you okay?" The dam inside me broke. I shook my head violently, tears spilling down my cheeks. I pressed my palms against the glass as if begging him to pull me through. He motioned for me to open the window. My hands trembled as I unlatched it, quietly, pushing it up just enough for his whisper to slip inside. "I heard your parents," he said softly. "I know what they're planning. You can't stay here." A sob escaped my lips. "I tried to run," I whispered, my voice shaking. "She caught me. She won't let me go." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Then I'll help you, tonight." My breath caught. Hope and fear collided in my chest. How? The door's locked. She'll hear us. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small key. My heart nearly stopped. My dad fixed this window years ago. I kept the spare. I can get you out. For the first time in months, the crushing weight on my chest lifted just a little, but terror still gnawed at me. "If they find out?" "They won't," he said firmly. "You don't deserve this. Neither does your baby. Trust me." That word, trust, pierced me. Trust had already destroyed me once. But when I looked into Daniel's eyes, I saw something different. Not greed, not cruelty, just quiet determination. My hands shook as I whispered, "Okay." He slipped the key into the lock of the window, turning it with a soft click. The frame creaked as it opened, the night air rushing into the room like freedom itself. My heart pounded so loudly I feared it would wake the whole house. I grabbed a small sweater from the chair, slipping it over my thin arms. My bag was gone, but I didn't care. All I needed was a chance. Daniel reached out his hand. I hesitated for a moment, staring at it, trembling. Then I placed my hand in his, and he pulled me through the window into the night. The grass was cold beneath my bare feet, the moonlight casting long shadows across the yard. For a moment, I felt weightless, free. But the freedom was fragile, and I knew it could shatter at any second. We crept through the darkness, our breaths shallow, our steps silent. Every creak of the boards, every rustle of the leaves made me flinch. I half expected my mother's voice to cut through the night, dragging me back into that prison. But the house stayed silent. When we reached the edge of the street, Daniel turned to me, his voice urgent. "Where do you want to go?" I froze. I hadn't thought that far. I had been so focused on escaping that I had no plan, no destination. My heart sank. I don't know. Daniel clenched his jaw, thinking. Then you'll come with me, at least until we figure it out. My eyes widened. But your parents, they won't know. And even if they do, I don't care. I'm not letting them hurt you. Tears filled my eyes again. For the first time since my nightmare began, someone was on my side. Someone cared enough to risk everything. I whispered, "Thank you." But as we stepped onto the road, the sound of a door slamming behind us froze me in my tracks. My mother's voice cut through the night like a blade. "Where do you think you're going?"
Her voice ripped through the night like thunder. "Where do you think you're going?" I froze, my legs trembling, my chest tight. Daniel's grip on my hand tightened, but I couldn't move. My mother stood in the doorway, her nightgown whipping in the wind, her face twisted with fury and betrayal. Behind her, I saw the faint silhouette of my father, his arms crossed, his eyes dark with silent judgment. "Back inside," my mother ordered, her voice like steel. "Now!" Daniel stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body. His voice was steady, though I could feel the tension radiating from him. "She doesn't belong to you anymore. You can't force her into this." My mother's eyes narrowed, her voice dripping with venom. "And who are you, boy? A savior? You think you can fix her? You think you can fix what she's done?" Her words cut deep, sharper than knives. She didn't even see me as her daughter anymore, only as a wound, an embarrassment, a burden she needed to erase. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but louder than it had been in months. "Mama, please, I can't do this. I can't let you take my baby away. I won't." Her eyes flashed with rage. "Your baby? No, this is not a baby. This is a stain. And if you let it grow, it will ruin all of us. You are my daughter, and you will do as I say." Her words made my knees buckle, but Daniel's hand steadied me. His voice rose, louder now, echoing in the night. "She's not your prisoner. She has a right to choose." My father finally spoke, his tone low and cold. "You don't belong here, boy. Leave before I make you regret stepping foot on this property." Daniel didn't flinch, not without her. Tears blurred my vision as the air grew thick with tension. I had dreamed of someone fighting for me, standing beside me, but now that it was happening, I was terrified because I knew how far my parents were willing to go. My mother stepped closer, her finger pointed at me like a weapon. "This is your last chance. Come back inside, or I swear I will make sure you regret the day you were born." Her words crushed me. My body shook with fear, but somewhere deep inside, a small flame refused to die. For the first time, I realized something shocking. She might have given me life, but she was not giving me love. And maybe, just maybe, that meant I didn't owe her my obedience anymore. I took a shaky breath, my voice barely more than a whisper. "No, Mama, I can't." Her face twisted with disbelief. "What did you say?" I lifted my head, tears streaming down my cheeks, my heart pounding. I said, "No, you can't take this from me. You can't take me from me. Not anymore." For a moment, silence hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Then my mother's rage exploded. She lunged forward, her hand raised as if to strike me. But before she could, Daniel pulled me back, his voice fierce. "Enough. She's coming with me." The world spun as he grabbed my hand and pulled me down the street, my mother's screams echoing behind us. My father shouted something I couldn't hear, but I didn't dare look back. My legs burned, my lungs ached, my heart pounded with terror and freedom all at once. We didn't stop until the house was nothing but a shadow in the distance. I collapsed on the curb, gasping for air, my body trembling. Daniel knelt beside me, his hand still gripping mine tightly, his face flushed with determination. "You're safe now. I won't let them hurt you again." But even as his words wrapped around me, fear gnawed at my chest.
because I knew it wasn't over. My mother wouldn't give up so easily, and the world outside her house wasn't safe either. I stared at the dark road ahead, my voice breaking. "Daniel, where do we go now?" He looked at me, his eyes steady, his jaw set. "Anywhere but back. We'll figure it out, together." And though I wanted to believe him, deep inside I knew the truth. Running away was only the beginning of a much harder battle, because sooner or later, someone would come looking.
Morning light seeped into the shed, cold and merciless, exposing every crack in the rotting wood and every crack in my soul. My body ached from the hard floor, my stomach churned with hunger, and my mind was a storm of fear. Daniel sat against the wall, his eyes half closed, but still alert, as though, even in exhaustion, he refused to let me out of his sight. When he noticed me stir, he offered a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Hungry?" he asked. I nodded weakly, pressing a hand against my stomach. The hunger wasn't just mine anymore, it was ours. Every pang reminded me that I wasn't just running for myself, I was running for the life inside me. Daniel pulled a crushed granola bar from his pocket, probably taken in haste from his own kitchen. He broke it in half and handed it to me. I stared at the piece in my hand, tears burning my eyes. "It's not much," he said softly, "but it's something." I wanted to tell him to keep it, that he needed it more than I did. But when I looked at his face, pale, tired, determined, I realized we both needed strength. So I ate, each bite dry and tasteless, but it kept me alive. Alive. That was all I could focus on now. Not happiness, not peace, just survival. But survival isn't simple when you're 16, homeless, and hunted by your own family. All morning we sat in silence, listening for footsteps, for voices, for the sound of my mother's fury reaching us. Every creak of the trees, every snap of a twig outside the shed made my heart race. By midday, I knew we couldn't stay. The shed wasn't safety, it was a pause, a fragile delay before the storm found us. My mother would be searching. She would not stop. And the town would talk, whispering louder, eager to feast on my shame. I turned to Daniel, my voice trembling. "We can't stay here. She'll find me. They all will." His jaw tightened. "Then we'll leave, farther, away from this town, away from her." The idea terrified me, leaving the only place I had ever known, stepping into a world I didn't understand with nothing but fear and hope. It felt impossible, but staying meant destruction. "Where would we go?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "My aunt lives 2 towns over. She's different. She doesn't care about gossip. Maybe she'd help. Maybe she'd understand." The thought of someone, anyone, seeing me more than shame sent a flicker of warmth through me. But hope is dangerous. I had learned that the hard way. "What if she doesn't believe me?" I whispered. "What if she's like the rest?" Daniel's eyes met mine, steady, unflinching. "Then at least we tried. But you can't go back. You know that, don't you?" I swallowed hard, tears sliding down my cheeks. He was right. I couldn't go back. Not to my parents, not to the house that had become a prison, not to the girl that I used to be. The only path left was forward, into the unknown. That afternoon, we left the shed. My legs trembled with every step, my body weak, but Daniel kept me steady. The road stretched ahead like a cruel test, empty and endless. Cars passed occasionally, their drivers glancing at us, but never stopping. To them, we were just 2 kids walking. They couldn't see the war inside me. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of fire, exhaustion clawed at my bones. My feet ached, my throat was dry, and every step felt heavier than the last.
But I pressed on because stopping meant surrender. When night began to fall, we finally reached the edge of the next town. Lights twinkled in the distance, promises of food, warmth, maybe even safety. But fear gnawed at me. Safety was an illusion I had no longer believed in. Daniel turned to me, his voice soft. "We're almost there, just a little farther." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that his aunt's door would open, that she would see me as a human being, not a disgrace. But deep down, I knew the truth. Every door I had ever known had been slammed in my face. And as we approached the first house on the quiet street, a sound cut through the night that made my blood run cold. A car slowed behind us. I turned my head, and under the glow of the streetlight, I saw it, my father's car.
The headlights burned into my back as the car slowed, its tires crunching against the gravel. My heart stopped. Daniel's grip on my hand tightened, but I could feel the tremor in his fingers. The door opened. My father stepped out, his silhouette towering under the streetlight. His face was carved in stone, unreadable, but his eyes were filled with the same cold judgment I had seen my entire life. "Get in the car," he said flatly. My knees shook. The words weren't shouted, but they were a command. The kind that carried the weight of years of obedience. The kind that reminded me I was still his child, at least in the eyes of the world. But I wasn't just his child anymore. I was a mother too, or I was about to be, and that gave me a strength I had never known. I shook my head slowly, tears sliding down my cheeks. "No." His eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. "You don't get to say no. You've disgraced this family enough. Get in the car before I drag you in myself." Daniel stepped in front of me, his voice firm. "She's not going anywhere with you. She's not your prisoner." My father's face twisted, rage flashing across his features. "And who are you to interfere in my family? This is my daughter, my responsibility." Daniel's voice didn't waver. "Then you should have protected her, but you didn't." The words cut through the night like lightning. My father's face went pale, his lips parting as though Daniel had spoken the one truth he couldn't deny. Silence hung heavy in the air. My breath came fast, my heart pounding, and then for the first time I found my voice. "No, Papa, I won't go back. Not this time. You can call me a disgrace, you can turn your back on me, but you will not take my child. You will not take what little hope I have left." Tears blurred my vision as the words poured out of me, a flood I could no longer contain. "You never asked what happened. You never asked who hurt me. You never asked if I was okay. You just wanted the problem to disappear. But I am not a problem. And this baby is not a mistake. We deserve to live." My father's lips trembled, his fists clenched at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might strike me, drag me kicking and screaming into the car. But then something shifted. His shoulders slumped, his eyes fell, and for the first time, I saw not rage, but shame. He looked away. Without a word, he turned back to the car, slammed the door shut, and drove off into the night. I collapsed to my knees, sobs racking my body. Relief, terror, grief, it all poured out of me at once. Daniel knelt beside me, his arms wrapping around me, holding me as if I was something worth protecting. "You're safe," he whispered again. For real this time. I clung to him, my tears soaking his shirt. I knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would still be whispers, judgment, hunger, fear. But for the first time in so long, I wasn't alone. I had someone who stood beside me. I had a fire inside me that even my mother couldn't kill. And most of all,
I had my child. Looking back now, years later, I see that night as the moment everything changed. The night I stopped being a scared, broken girl and became a mother willing to fight. The night I realized that family isn't just the people you're born to, it's the people who choose to stand beside you when the world turns away. And if you take nothing else from my story, take this: silence kills, but truth heals. Fear imprisons, but love sets you free. And no matter how broken you feel, you are never beyond saving. Because even in the darkest night, there is always a way forward.